So, many of us have noticed an increased strain on our necks or our backs due to the constant sitting and staring at our screens. I haven't seen my chiropractor until just before the last lockdown, and I have no doubt that my spine is out of alignment. I'm always amazed at how I go into the chiropractor's office, a few cracks later and a stint on her magic machine, and I feel immediate relief. If only the pain and troubles in the rest of our life were fixed that quickly. This is the time of year where we take note of our aches and pains, our weaknesses and our strengths, and the things that exacerbate or alleviate them. Only these aches and pains cannot be fixed by a chiropractor or a physio or a pill. These aches and pains lie far within, and no crick and no magic machine can fix them. For this, we need a spiritual alignment. And tonight, on this Kol Nidrei, we begin our treatment. The first thing to note is that we are not broken, just out of alignment. It happens from the general wear and tear of life. This year has been particularly taxing on our spirits. Some of us feel broken indeed, but we're not. Some of us feel perfectly fine, but we're not. Because we're human and life isn't perfect. Pain, suffering, loss, disappointment, frustration, sadness, all these are perfectly normal feelings and experiences. Disney made a bucket load of money selling people on happy endings, creating an illusion that there is such a thing as happily ever after. Only there isn't. There is happy sometimes, sad sometimes, excited and joyful, disappointed and angry, curious and innovative, bored and stagnant, antsy and content. That's normal. That's life. At different times in our lives, we might experience more or less of these certain emotions. But life is about balance, and each of us finds the balance in a different way. It is no coincidence that the symbol for the Hebrew month of Tishrei is Moznaim, meaning balance or scales. This is the time of year where we seek to balance our internal scales while God looks at the big picture. Thus, whether we are overwhelmed by our pain, are numb to it, or oblivious to it, or have overcompensated for it, or have learned to live with it, we are all off balance, and this is the time for our spiritual realignment. I must emphasize that Judaism is not about the pursuit of happiness, nor is it about the embracing of suffering, but rather about the pursuit of meaning and tikkun olam, repairing the world. Of course, one cannot repair the world unless one repairs oneself, tikkun atzmi. To acknowledge the goal of tikkun presumes an acceptance of imperfection, malfunction, and misalignment that is indeed fixable until the next malfunction. Every fix-it job strengthens one area. Every new crack identifies not only a problem, but an opportunity for reinforced strength, of bettering oneself and the world, not merely putting it back to normal. So how do we identify our cracks, the areas in need of repair or realignment? For some of us, it's obvious. For others, we may not know where to begin. A good place to start is by identifying a thought that we're struggling with, generally a recurring thought that we've had for a while. It could be, everything is so much harder because of this lockdown, for example. That may indeed be true for many of us. We may try to suppress the thought, holding it down, trying not to let it get us down. We may try to avoid the thought by distracting ourselves, by doing other things, but we know it's still there. We may let the thought guide our emotions until we feel angry, frustrated, sad, or helpless. The first step in our spiritual realignment is to accept the thought and not try to change it, neither embrace it nor suppress it, rather accept it and change our relationship to the thought. As Jews, we're taught that so much of life is outside of our control. The Mishnah teaches us all is foreseen. In other words, God knows what's going to happen. We don't. It's out of our control. And yet the Mishnah also teaches us free will is given. We have a choice to act. We are often thrown into various circumstances outside of our control, and yet we always have the choice how to respond to those circumstances. And those choices bring about positive and negative consequences. The same is true for our thoughts. Rather than trying to control our thoughts, we can accept them and control how we respond and relate to them. For example, if our recurring thought is, everything is much harder because of this lockdown, rather than trying to block it out, we can accept it and respond to it by thinking, everything is so much harder because of this lockdown, so I can't do as much, and I'm unproductive, or I'm missing out on spending quality time with the people I care about. These ways of relating to the thoughts make us feel sad or resentful. Alternatively, we can choose to relate to the thought, everything is so much harder because of lockdown, so I need to go easier on myself and not expect as much, or I just need to push through it until the restrictions are eased. Relating to thoughts in this way brings about positive consequences, making us feel relieved and hopeful. The thought didn't change, only our relationship to the thought did. As we will read in the Torah tomorrow morning, I set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life. Our thoughts come to us. We choose their purpose. Perhaps they don't all bring about blessings or curses, but the choices we make on how we relate to them have the potential to bring positive or negative consequences. We want to relate to our thoughts in a way that is life-sustaining and not life-draining. Remember, choose life. The second step in our spiritual realignment is to let go of our thoughts and feelings rather than to hold them tight. I feel trapped. I can't do anything. I miss human contact. Our thoughts are just that, thoughts. Just because we think them doesn't make them real or permanent. They do not define who we are or what we do. We may feel trapped right now, but are we? We may feel that we may miss human contact, but look at how we're all connecting right now. It's not the same to be in touch physically with one another, but we certainly are connecting. Now, that being said, logic doesn't always make us feel better. In this case, just letting go of our thoughts is really helpful. One beautiful metaphor I heard was imagining putting our thoughts on leaves and watching them float down a river. Imagine taking them out of our head, like a pensieve for you Harry Potter fans, placing them on a leaf and letting them go and watching them float away. It's just like our tashlich ceremony, where we symbolically place our sins or wrongful acts on breadcrumbs or sticks or lint in our pockets and throw them in the water, watching them float away. Do our wrong deeds actually float away? No, they've already happened. But the ceremony can help us let go of our preoccupied thoughts about our actions. Just like imagining our negative, intrusive thoughts floating away can help alleviate some of the angst caused by those thoughts. Tomorrow afternoon, during our mincha service, we will reenact the ceremony where the Kohanim, the high priest, ask for forgiveness for themselves, for their families, and the entire community. The traditional Torah reading on Yom Kippur tells of the Kohanim transferring the sins onto a goat and letting the goat run away and take the sins with it. Letting go is an important part of spiritual realignment, balancing our internal scales, creating for us a fresh start. The third step in our spiritual realignment is confrontation. The most common source of misalignment is avoidance. Most of us avoid unpleasant experiences, people, and feelings. It's natural. We think life is supposed to be good and happy, devoid of unpleasantness and discomfort. Not true. But sometimes we need to confront the discomfort and unpleasantness to get through it. Avoidance doesn't make it go away. It either delays the inevitable or rests as a constant worry in our minds. Sometimes we avoid things by shutting them down and suppressing them. Other times we avoid them by trying to make ourselves feel better, by eating a tub of ice cream, having a glass of wine or whiskey, watching TV, any which way we do it. That what we are trying to avoid rarely goes away. The teshuvah process is about confronting those things we want to avoid. I'm going to share my screen with you because it's a bit complicated to get your head around. This is my little spot. There we go. Wait. There. Okay. So the teshuvah process is about confronting the things we want to avoid. Tonight, in this context of spiritual alignment, I suggest we first recognize that which causes us discomfort or pain. Oh, you guys can't see it up there, but hopefully other people can. The second thing is to refrain from trying to suppress that discomfort or pain, from trying to appease ourselves and making ourselves feel better. We must confront the discomfort or pain and relinquish control over those experiences, thoughts, or feelings by letting them go. And then we must regroup and move forward, lighter and with greater perspective. The process of teshuvah reminds us that we are not bound by our thoughts or actions. Oh, sorry. There, now you can see it. There is always the possibility of change. Remember, the gates of teshuvah are always open. Once we've cleared up the kinks in our attachments to and our control over our thoughts, identified our unpleasant and painful feelings, and examined our avoidance strategies, the fourth step in our spiritual realignment is values identification. I think this is one of the most difficult steps for many of us. How do we identify our values? Now, as a rabbi, I can give you a list of values that are inherent in our Jewish tradition. I reckon any religion is based on a philosophy of lived values. But I wonder how many of us actually live by those values and are guided by those values. Values could be understood as chosen life directions. Traditionally, Jewish values are taught through learning and observing mitzvot, God's commandments. With a progressive approach to Judaism, we teach that Jewish practice is about informed choice. Our Jewish values are based on our chosen life directions. Jewish values need not only relate to prayer or Shabbat or the Chagim, but rather Jewish values, like all values, are designed to give our life direction, meaning, and purpose. Our Jewish values include our chosen life directions for the betterment of the world, tikkun olam, as well as tikkun atzmi, the reparation of the self. That being said, we no longer live in a world where we are told, this is what we value, and so we do. We live in a world where we must consciously identify our values. So how do we do that? We can ask ourselves, what is most important to us in our lives? However, be careful not to confuse values and goals. We're not looking for something that we want to achieve. We're interested in the quality of the experience, the meaning and the significance we attribute to it. Our values give us a sense of vitality. They make us feel good, alive, purposeful. Try this with me. Try to identify a time in your lives where everything came together, where you felt a true sense of contentment, a time that you wanted to last. So think of a time. Do you have one? I hope you do. Okay. What made that experience so special, so important, so meaningful? Within the answers to those questions lie at least some of our values. That which we cherish, that which gives our life meaning, purpose, and direction. The final step in our spiritual realignment is living according to our values, making choices grounded in our values. Ready for the test to see how aligned or misaligned we are? Imagine being at your 100th birthday party and you need to choose one person to speak. Who would that person be? Think about what you would want that person to say. What would you want that person to say? Not what you think that person would say about you, but what would you want that person to say? Think about it. Now think about the first question that I asked. Identify a time in your life where everything came together, where you felt a true sense of contentment, a time that you wanted to last. And think about the values you identified in that process. I might put this up for you guys to see later because I recognize this is fast to get this through. Think about what you wanted the person to say about you at your 100th birthday party. How similar or different are the answers to those two questions? My final question is, what would you say about yourself right now? This is your homework for Yom Kippur. Look at your response to this final question. What would you say about you and your life right now? How does that relate to a time in your life that you wanted to last forever? And how does that relate to the way you want people to talk about you at your 100th birthday party? This will determine your degree of spiritual misalignment. Your treatment plan must be individualized. The duration of the treatment is up to you. The steps are clear. The first step, again, I'm putting it on the screen. Sorry, this is taking a while, but it's easier to understand if you can see. You guys are just going to have to listen in here. 5 steps to spiritual realignment. The first one is acceptance of thoughts and feelings. All is foreseen, yet free will is given. We cannot control our circumstances, but we can choose how we relate to them. The second step is letting go. Letting go of control of and attachment to our thoughts and feelings, allowing ourselves a fresh start. The third step is confrontation. It's that Shuva process of realignment. Recognize what causes pain and discomfort, refrain from trying to repress it and appease ourselves, relinquish control over those experiences by letting them go, and then regrouping and moving forward with lighter and greater perspective. The fourth step is values identification, identifying what is most important to us and how we want to direct our life choices. And the final step is value living, making choices that are consistent with our values, creating a fulfilling and meaningful and purposeful life. Tonight is just the beginning. Consider this your spiritual checkup. This is the time of year for our spiritual realignment. Good luck in your process. May we all come out tomorrow night at least a little bit more balanced. Ken Yehiratzon. May this be God's will.